Welcome to GIS, or ROP GIS Fundamentals, or my preference, Computer Mapping with GIS. Over the next couple of weeks, as you start to learn GIS, I think you will be fascinated by what you will be able to do. I imagine this picture is how some of you may feel right now. But we have a lot to do over the next 180 days. Field trips, GIS day, presentations, 3D maps. We will have fun learning together. The short video that follows is only the tip of the GIS iceberg. Here we go.
The Career Day camera crew visited the City of Alexandria Police Department in Alexandria, Virginia, where analysts are using GIS to help police officers fight crime.
Absolutely. I think the best way to define GIS is to talk about how it's about placing data into a geographic context. So the police department has all sorts of data. There's data on criminal incidents, there's data on arrests, calls for service information, that's anytime somebody calls the police department, towed vehicles, all that is data. And so without GIS, we really can't analyze where things happen in relation to other things. So GIS really helps us to put incidents on a map and then look at the relationships between where this crime occurred, where that vehicle was towed, where this person was contacted by the police department. So it really brings everything together. I can tell you what law enforcement did before, and that is that they would hang a map on the wall and they stick pins in the map to tell them where certain crime happens. And they might use a blue pin for a burglary and a red pin for an auto theft. And you know, that was analysis, and that was good, but it was cumbersome. And if somebody walked by the map and knocked the pins out of the map, then somebody had to scramble and figure out where the pins went, you know? So there were a lot of issues with that. Police departments are starting to understand that you need GIS, you need analysis in general to solve some of these problems, to take some of the burden off of police officers and detectives as far as using their memory to solve problems, and to actually use data and analysis to solve problems. And so you see more departments hiring civilian crime analysts or even turning sworn positions into crime analysts so that they can really understand and most effectively respond to the problems in their communities.
Matt, I understand that there's been some more larcenies on the South Whiting Street area. Could you pull up a map and tell me exactly where they've been happening?
Absolutely. Are you looking for larceny grand, larceny petted, anything specifically?
Mainly larceny from autos.
Okay.
This tool is actually using GIS too, and it's a tool called pictometry, and allows us to find the aerial photo of a particular address. And so if we have an incident that occurred at, let's say, City Hall. City Hall is 301 King Street. So I can type that in and search for it. It's going to give me a return. And I say select it. And it's going to zoom us into King Street and show us the aerial photo for that. This is very important for operational purposes. You can see that this is Market Square and City Hall here at King Street. And we're looking at it from this angle. But suppose I'm reading the report and it tells me that the crime, this view always comes in from the south to the north, but it tells me that the crime happened on the west side of City Hall, which is over along this street right here. Then I can shift to that view and click the west side, and it's going to go ahead and show me now the west side of City Hall.
In January of 2015, I was working in Freetown, Sierra Leone, and it was the height of the Ebola outbreak in that city. And everyone was really afraid. And unfortunately, that fear translated into a policy of containment using quarantines. And a very large number of people, entire families, entire communities were placed under quarantine. And it meant that they were essentially locked into their homes. And there wasn't a very good plan for how to get food and water and medical care to them. My team was going from quarantine to quarantine and interviewing people to see if they had what they needed to survive for that period. And what we found is virtually no one had just the basics that they needed. There were pregnant women who were locked into quarantines and they didn't know where they would go to be able to deliver their baby safely. We had situations where families were in a quarantine without access to a latrine. We had a huge database showing how many people were lacking basic necessities, but no one was really listening to us when we were trying to advocate for increasing their access to food and water and healthcare. So we gave the database to the GIS officer who was working with us, and he mapped it. And all of a sudden we had a visualization of where people were and what they needed in each of those areas. When we went to the official meeting, we put the map on the table and we had a copy for everyone. And all of a sudden they could see exactly what we were talking about and they couldn't be ignored anymore. People actually had to change policies and change the way that they were operating in order to meet the needs of people who were under quarantine. GIS stands for Geographic Information Systems. It's an out branch of mapping, but unlike a regular map, GIS is using multiple layers of data. So in the same map, you can have the physical geography of an area, but you could also have the cultural geography. This was really important to us when we were working at the beginning of the Ebola outbreak, because it was an area that hadn't been mapped before. So we needed to know where villages and roads were, we needed to know where the bridges were so that we could reach villages. We heard a lot of rumors about an area where there were cases, where there were sick people, where there were more than the usual number of funerals, and we didn't know where they were or how to reach them. Once we had maps of the areas, we could actually plan out strategically how to reach them. One of the really difficult things in Ebola is that we felt like we were always running after cases. GIS was really important to us when we were able to map the exact location of cases and then also how many cases had been found in each location. In that way, instead of simply sending medical teams to places that already had cases of Ebola, we could also send health educators to places that were geographically proximate but didn't yet have cases of Ebola. And that was really the first step that we were using to try to prevent the spread of the virus into new communities. It meant that we worked faster, it meant that we worked with better information, we could be more strategic, and ultimately we saved more lives because we had better mapping available to us.
My name is Jacqueline Gallagher. I'm the chair of the Department of Geography. Geography is not a subject that most students think about taking at college. Most students in the United States don't realize that you can major in geography, but in fact it's a really, really good major, and it's sort of like the quintessential liberal arts subject because it's interdisciplinary and it involves a study from human geography, cultural, globalization, economics, all the way through physical geography. We teach climate, we teach geomorphology. And so in that sense, our department does all of geography in some considerable depth, which most schools in Virginia do not do. All of the literature says that there are more jobs in GIS than there are people to fill them, than there will be people to fill them. And so it's a fabulous add-on, a professional skill that you can do with your major, and the students with the certificate have a 90% employment rate on graduation, which is incredibly high. So these students are incredibly well prepared and then can go out into the world and do GIS.